Our next and final guest today is Modwenna Rees-Mogg. She's the founder and CEO of Angel News and a champion of the entrepreneur community. Welcome to the show, Modwenna.
Hello, Guy.
You're one of the founders of Crowd Rating, aren't you? Another venture.
I am, yes.
And I believe you're a co-founder with the former chief executive of Interactive Investor, Alex Heath. Is that correct?
Absolutely. When Interactive Investor first started in the early 90s, he was brought in as the first CEO and helped bring it to a sort of commercial model and set the start of what's become a very successful business.
Brilliant. So a couple of people who really know what they're doing then.
I hope so.
You two.
I hope so.
Yeah. So Crowd Rating's new. It's a new venture. Tell us what it does, who it's for.
It's a new venture in this market, but it's actually a, wouldn't like to quite say replication, but it's a reinvention of what's existed in other markets for a long time. So we like to see ourselves a bit like a Moody's or Standard & Poor's, but for equity crowdfunding. We believe there's an enormous opportunity for investors to have an independent view by people who are experts of equity crowdfunding opportunities.
So it's a fully sort of research-based model.
Yes, we have we have two principles. One is that we believe that you need to look at the facts and prepare things as carefully as you can. But then when you interpret the facts, you also need a human head, a human brain, to actually look at that and say, how does that make sense, and help people understand what those facts mean.
So no robots allowed.
So we do have a ratings engine, which we don't allow to be we don't call it a robot, we call it an engine.
Right.
And if you can imagine, we pour the facts about the campaign, whether that's the financial projections or details about what the management know and want to do, and we score that against a predetermined set of scores.
Okay.
And then, having created the scores, we look at the scores as human beings and write guidance notes around the scores to help investors understand what that score means in the specific context of that company.
And can investors rely on that information? I mean, obviously you're trying to present the facts, but if an investor makes an investment and it sort of went wrong, could they look back and say, oh, well, you said it was okay?
Well, they're welcome to, but we are one small part of their investment decision, and I would absolutely encourage every investor always to seek as much counsel as possible. That, you know, if they're advised investors, they should be taking advice. If they're sophisticated and high net worth, I'm sure they have a lot of internal knowledge already that they've from their experience, but also they will have other people they can talk to. And I don't think anyone ever should solely rely on us or anyone else.
So what's the Crowd Rating business model?
So at the moment we're a freemium model. We're only 3 months old, so we're still very new. So we're still learning, and what we need to do to identify our monetization model is where value is for people. Right. So we hope that in time investors will see value. If they see value, they will hopefully pay us for something. Likewise for entrepreneurs, maybe they will see value. But the rating itself is free, because it's very important that the rating is known to be something that you cannot buy.
Right.
So the ratings stay free. And
are you finding a strong take-up of people signing up for the free service?
Yes, we've got a good, healthy take-up. It's very interesting how people are coming in and the types of people. We're getting sophisticated investors, high net worth investors, advised investors, quite a lot of what's called officially professional clients, but those will be venture capitalists and indeed lawyers and accountants. So we're
and how are you getting that? How are you getting that audience?
We're great tweeters. We're trying to really exploit Twitter.
Okay.
And I think we're getting quite a lot virally by people. We haven't yet started doing major advertising campaigns on bus stops or anything yet, but maybe one day. But we'd like to, as many as people possible, to see them. We'd also like to encourage investors and others who see the ratings to use our bulletin boards to comment, because this is our view based on the facts we've gathered, but of course people will have lots of different views.
So is that a sort of social, can people comment and see what everyone else has said? And
yeah, so we're behind a walled garden, so you have to register with us to see the rating.
Right.
But once you've registered and agreed that you are an appropriately person who's qualified to see the rating, you can then go and look as much as you like, and then we have a bulletin board where you can go in and say what you think.
Say what you think and see what other people think too. Brilliant. Well, I think it's a really interesting development in the industry, because it's quite difficult to find out real information about some of these businesses from some of the pitches that actually go up online. You know, you have to be almost you have to be able to do a lot of research, and so you're taking a lot of the pain away of that. So let's talk about the crowdfunding industry for a minute. I mean, obviously it's growing. What sort of size is it, do you think? How many people are actually investing as a crowd these days? I mean, do we know any numbers on that?
I think we're now into, I think they're predicting probably 150 to 200 million of capital being raised across all the equity crowdfunding platforms this year.
Okay.
So that gives us, and it's up from about, I think, 80 million last year.
So it's really growing.
It's more than doubling.
Yeah. Do we know how many people that would,
so I think
that would be?
No question, Crowdcube are very proud to put the number, they have registered investors.
Right.
And they're at 235 odd thousand registered people. So that's our baseline. Yep. Clearly other platforms will have other investors and there will also be some overlap. So I presume we should assume north of 230,000 people have
north of 230,000 now investing.
Well, are now registering.
Or registering.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not all of those will have invested.
So earlier in the show we had Sarah Wadham talking about EIS and SEIS, or perhaps I should have put that the other way around. Yeah. But so how important is that whole SEIS EIS thing to these investors in the crowd?
I think it's a really important way of understanding that you're doing something very risky, you're doing something so risky that the government's prepared to give you a tax break.
Right.
And you should understand that it's not in place of the risk. It's a present from the government to
reduce
your capital outlay, and if things go wrong, you can get loss relief. But it is not a surrogate. It doesn't de-risk the deal itself. It de-risks your financial investment.
Do you think people invest to get the tax relief? I mean, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Sometimes, we sometimes talk about the tax tail wagging the dog. I don't know what you think about that.
I think people should remember that these schemes have a lot of rules and caveats in them, and that you have to be invested for 3 years without any of those rules being broken to guarantee that you can qualify for the tax breaks. So when you get your first upfront income tax rebate, I suggest very much you put that into a deposit account and leave it there for 3 years, because there are situations where you can lose the tax break. I definitely think that it's a tax break for the individual investor. It's not for the company.
Right.
So when you're thinking about valuing the company, you should sort of strike the deal on the valuation of the company and whether you just think that's right or not. Yeah. And then the tax break is your little sort of your personal present from the government.
So there could be a suggestion, of course, that companies increase their price because of the tax relief, increase the valuation because they know that investors are going to get tax relief. Do you think that can happen?
I think I wouldn't like to. I don't have actual evidence of that, so I wouldn't like to say that.
Sure
but I have seen in the past situations where there've been investors who don't qualify. Yeah. Maybe they're a VC or maybe they're overseas, and then EIS investors coming in, and there has been a debate about whether the price of the shares they buy should be differentiated because of the tax break, and I would again say no. No.
Okay, well, you know a lot about investors because your other business is called Angel News.
Yes, it is.
It is. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Angel News.
So I'm a great believer in transparency and communication and trying to help people understand, because if people learn and understand, they will make better decisions, whether those are yes or no. So Angel News was set up about 12 years ago now, with an idea of helping people understand what's going on in the market. So we report news on what companies are doing, we report news on what investors are doing. So if a VC does a deal, we report that. And then once a month we produce something called the Angel Newsletter, and we comment on appropriate things which are topical in the market around the time we publish. So that means it changes from month to month depending on what is most talked about.
Okay, well, time flies, Modwenna. Thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been great to speak to you. Thanks, Modwenna Rees-Mogg, founder and CEO of Angel News and co-founder of Crowd Rating.